There's so many people that are angry, Hanne. In America, there's a lot, and around the world, I should say, people are angry. People are, it seems like we're so divided like never before. But where does that come from? Because we're not born angry. We're not born in pain. We're not born mad. We're not born sad. But the issues of the world can tend to overwhelm us or come in on us so much that people feel like they've got to take their anger out on other people.
So welcome to the Herland Report, Dr. Brenda Caldwell.
Thank you for having me.
You are a renowned psychologist, and your special field is really forgiveness and forgiveness therapy. You travel all over America.
I do.
And we heard about you coming from Europe, and we so desired to have you on this show. You are also an author of a number of books, and we're going to speak about these books too, From Charcoal to Diamond. We suggest for everyone to read those books, and also your book about the surgery for the soul.
Surgery for the soul.
Yes, and we're going to discuss all of these topics here. And you are also an artist.
I am.
A visionary artist. But first and foremost, tell us a little bit about your own life and what got you into this vast field for 30 years now of helping so many people in the United States.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Hanne, for having me to be a part of the Herland Report and just the opportunity to share a little bit about me and why I do what I do. One of the things that motivates me is being able to every day get up and know that in some way I get to touch a life, whether it's through bringing hope, whether it's through healing. And one of the things that got me into it is that for years, I worked with children. I started volunteering. I knew that I could speak well. People always said, oh, you motivate, you inspire me, you encourage me. So kind of going back to high school, I would always be that motivational, inspiring person. But I started working with children. I was a volunteer at a youth facility, and I saw so many children hurting. I saw so many children just broken, coming from broken homes, and it did something to me. And I said, I want to touch their lives. I want to be a reason that kids can heal. I want to put families back together again. And so the psychology work, the counseling work, all began years ago just because I was tired of seeing children weep from just brokenness or abuse or shame. So many kids carry shame, or people carry shame. So that sort of got me into the field, if you will, of counseling and therapy. And so the other things that I do kind of evolved from there.
And you got your PhD from the University of Memphis.
So I am from the University of Memphis, and then I have a psychology, Christian psychology degree from Jacksonville Theological Seminary, which is in Jacksonville, Florida. So that's where I actually got the doctorate from. And so my undergraduate was at U of M, University of Memphis. And I came from a sports background. I played basketball, I ran track, and I used that as a carrot, if you will, to draw young people. So my first introduction to helping and impacting lives, again, it started with young people, and then it evolved from there. I started doing work with women because I saw that so many women deal with abuse, coming out of domestic violence or coming out of, again, those issues from their fathers and so forth. So I started realizing that, wow, people are so hurting. How can I be an agent of hope, or how can I be an agent of healing? And so back then, that's what got me motivated, and that's what got me inspired to get involved with touching the heart and dealing with what I call matters of the heart.
Yeah, and it's just so wonderful to hear, because in this time and age, there's so much trouble. There's so much political strife. There's so much strife of all kind, divisiveness
Yes.
all over the world, geopolitically as well as nationally and domestically here in the United States. And we discuss that and we read about it in the news. But not so often do we hear somebody speak about the hope and the chance to come out of a situation of desperation and really to teach us the mind. I mean, it's really a mind game.
Absolutely.
And for psychologists like yourself to be able to teach us how to come out of that pain in that painful situation.
Absolutely, because people tell us to forgive or to let go, but we don't really talk about the how. So how do you let go of someone maybe walking out of your life? How do you let go? And I think there's so many people that are angry, Hanne. In America, there's a lot, and around the world, I should say, people are angry. People are, it seems like we're so divided like never before. But where does that come from? Because we're not born angry. We're not born in pain. We're not born mad. We're not born sad. But the issues of the world can tend to overwhelm us or come in on us so much that people feel like they've got to take their anger out on other people. And that's where I come in, to help people realize that you don't. And I always tell people, I like to tell people, we have to make a decision at some point to stop having an affair with our past so we don't cheat on our future. How many people are stuck in the past, stuck with holding on to what happened to them in childhood, stuck to what happened to them in a relationship from 20 years ago, and then we take that out on people today. And so then we are not able to have healthy friendships today because we keep not being able to trust today because of somebody who hurt us in the past. That's not living. That's not life. So I just want people to know that they can choose to live. Life is about living. We don't even know how long we'll be here, so we don't need to give people the power to keep us in hurt or bondage or pain unnecessarily. We all get hurt, but when do we make a decision that we want to be free? And that's what we need to do, I think, collectively as a world. Stop being so hateful. Stop thinking that we need to hold grudges. Stop thinking we have nations against nations. We have races against races. We have just backgrounds against backgrounds. That's counterproductive, and that's why there's so much divide in the world, and people are angry. When are we going to stop being angry? We have to make a decision to look at ourselves and take inventory, because it starts with us. It starts with me. So if I'm angry, I tell my adults, my parents that I counsel with, angry parents many times produce angry children. So if you don't deal with your anger, it's going to spill out on your children. Then they take that to school. Then they take that anger and they take it out on someone else. So when does it end? We have to look at ourselves and decide that we can choose to change our attitude, change our heart, change our outlook on life. That's where it really starts.
And anger often comes from bitterness.
Yes.
Bitterness of what happened to you in life, unresolved issues, and you're just angry because somebody else did you wrong.
And anger is just one word, Hanne, from danger. Just one word. And how many people have walked around in so much anger that they caused danger because they exploded. You know, workplace shootings that we hear about, they've become commonplace around the world. Why? Because people don't deal with their anger. And that's why I discuss in my book, Surgery for the Soul, the importance of dealing with how to heal, how to deal with what I call the uns. And we all have them, but we have to make a decision to get rid of them. And uns I describe as unhealed hurt, unresolved issues, and unmet needs. So if we have things in our heart that are unhealed, it could be something that happened 20 years ago, we never healed from it, and so we walk around with that bitter seed in our heart. So many people walk around with the seed of bitterness. And here's the thing that's interesting, though, about bitterness. If we bite on something bitter, don't we instinctively we spit it out. We immediately get rid of bitterness out of our mouth. But we turn around, many people, and allow bitterness to rot the heart. So we'll get it out of our mouth, but we'll allow it to rot the heart for 30 years. No, we need to deal with the bitterness in the heart. And bitterness causes many of the diseases that we see today. It really does. The heart of many diseases. One disease is lupus, which is a hardening of the bones, a rotting, if you will, of the bones. That starts in the seat of the heart. So there are a lot of diseases that are caused from the seed of bitterness. And that means just choosing to hold on to something that happened to us. When we don't have to choose, we can choose to be free.
This is wonderful to listen to, because it really brings some hope into people's lives, because I do believe too that many who live with a lot of bitterness are not aware of the possibility to get rid of it. But what would be the remedy for all this anger?
The remedy, in a nutshell, I always tell people this: 7 letters have the power really to set us free. I call it the 7-word surgery, the 7-letter surgery, I should say, and that is FORGIVE. When you choose to forgive, you choose to be free. And so to understand the remedy is deciding that, because what bitterness is, what anger is, what unforgiveness is choosing to hold offense towards someone who hurt you. That's what it is. So whether it's bitterness, whether it's anger, whether it's unforgiveness, whether it's hatred, retaliation, grudges, all of that, at the end of the day, it's because I am choosing to hold on to pain. Someone caused me pain, and I refuse to let that pain go. I'm going to make them pay for what they did by punishing myself. What kind of sense does that make? It doesn't. That's like you drink poison but think someone else is going to die. Who does that? Who would literally take their daily medicine and along with that take a dose of cyanide poisoning every day? No one would, not in your right mind. So the solution is dealing with the heart. Everything starts with the matter of our heart, because happy people don't hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. Happy people bring happiness and draw happiness. Hurting people spew hurt out on other people. They spew anger. They spew those emotions out, and they contaminate the world. And that's what all of those emotions are. They're toxins, Hannah, that really destroys the body. Did you know that 61% of all cancer patients, medically documented, have some form of unforgiveness in the heart? 61%. That doesn't mean that everybody who has cancer is angry or holding unforgiveness, but it's a high number of people who do end up with a disease like cancer because they never dealt with what was in the heart in the first place. So we've got to, everything still goes back to the heart. That's why the Bible says, a very powerful scripture, Psalm 51:10 says, Lord, create in me a clean heart and renew in me the right spirit. What if we all took a checkup every day of our heart and just allowed our heart to be cleansed? Because we take on, just like our body gets dirty. We wash our body, but how many of us wash that heart? So that is one of the major keys to people being free, is allowing themselves to come clean and stop pretending. Stop pretending. That's what we tend to do. Oh, I love everybody. I don't hold a grudge, and I forgiven. I may not forget, but I forgiven. No, when you have not forgiven, that's when we make those statements like, I have forgiven, but I haven't forgotten. That's really saying, I don't want to forgive. I haven't forgiven, and when I get an opportunity, I'm going to remind you of what you did. So we have to deal with our heart.
And it also correlates to somebody's self-esteem, because like you were saying, if I do something good, I will also tend to feel good about myself.
Right.
And if I do something wrong, if I lie to you, for example, I'm not going to have a good self-esteem when meeting you. There's just the whole range of feelings that also touches on a person's self-esteem, because many ask, how can I get good self-esteem?
Right. Right. That's a good point that you bring up. Because no one, think about it, is born with low self-esteem. No one is born with high self-esteem. So where does self-esteem even come from? How are we shaped in our self-esteem? Well, sadly, in our country, in our world today, in America for sure I can speak on, is that when it comes to women, our self-esteem is so tied to how we physically look and how our exterior, is, how our face looks, how our body looks, and those kinds of things. So, but what if on any given day, that could all change, right? We could be disfigured on any given day. And again, what you're bringing up, what if you lie? What if you do something bad? How does that affect your self-esteem? One of the things that affects people's self-esteem is when something happens to them that causes them shame. It could be something like being molested or being raped or having some other degrading thing that happens to a person, because guilt says I did something bad, but shame says I am bad. That's the difference. So shame is one of those things that tends to erode a person's self-esteem. I can't feel good about myself because someone did something to me. I must have been a bad person. I must have asked for that. No, they did wrong. That doesn't mean for you to take on, and I find this a lot in counseling, that people who many times have been the victims of something horrible that happened to them are made to feel that they are bad people because they didn't stop it. They were raped and they didn't stop it. They were molested and they didn't tell someone, so they must be a bad person. No, and that affects their self-esteem. So we have to help people change their mindset and be able to understand that who you are is not based on what has happened to you. And what has happened to us doesn't erase God's value that we have, or the value we have in being created images, created in the image of a higher being. And for me, it's God. And so when we look at ourselves, if we can look at ourselves the way that God looks at us, then we will see that we are loved, that we are valued, that we are special, that we have purpose. But if we look at ourselves through what has happened to us or the things that we have done, then we can see many times worthless, dirty, no good, not good enough. Those kinds of things. Those are those kinds of things that tend to erode a person's self-esteem, Hanne.
And often we also do see how people are so attached to their families, and if there has been a tragedy in that particular family, or your mother or your father or your uncle. In Europe we have the question of, some had uncles that were members of the Nazi party, for example, or whatever, back in World War II, and there'll be a shame connected to the feeling of coming from a family that also, for example, has like a lower esteem among people, maybe being poor, deprived on some level, or coming from a rich family, or a reluctancy to get to know new people. Oh, she's probably just getting to know me because I'm rich. And I mean, there's so many varied elements there that create a situation for a young person in a family saying, I am not worth it because I come from a particular group of people. But to make young people understand that you are you and you are an individual. Absolutely. And you can detach yourself in a loving way, by all means, from those elements surrounding you, and be calm and have a good sense of self-worth.
Exactly, that's a good point, because you cannot help who your parents are. None of us. We cannot help what family we were born in, whether we're born into poverty, where our parents had nothing, or we were born and we are the product of a parent that perhaps did something evil or bad. We can't help those things. Those things are beyond our control. So one of the things that we need to teach young people and people alike is to understand that our value, our worth is not tied to who we are connected to blood-wise, biologically. Those things are beyond our control. Even whether we have money or don't have money, that's not really what gives us value. It may look like that in the world, but that's not. So one of the statements that I love to teach young people, and I teach clients, is this: to be able to say that my identity and my security is deeply rooted and grounded in one thing: God's love for me. God's love for me and God's acceptance of me. So when we realize that our value, our identity, so my identity cannot be because I'm a psychologist, I have a PhD, I'm an author. Those are things that I do, those are things that I've achieved, but that does not give me value. That doesn't give me, that's not what my identity lies, because if it were, then I would set myself up for just disappointment, because the world really doesn't care about that. What people care about, how do you make me feel? People really, one of the things is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so in terms of teaching young people what their value is knowing that they have worth that is far beyond what they could ever understand, and that's because they were created to fulfill their own purpose, their own destiny, irregardless of where they came from. People can say where you've been, they can say who your parents are, but they don't know where you're going. And people don't know. No one can write you off because you come from a poor family, or the things that you're saying that, if you were the rich one, well, praise God, that's wonderful, but that's still not what gives you value or worth. What difference are you making in the world? How does your life matter? What are your gifts? How are you using your gifts to impact the world? That's what's important.
And we're talking to the Doctor of Hope. We are talking to Dr. B, and we've come all the way from Europe to listen to you speak.
Thank you.
And we're so glad to have you on the Herland Report, Dr. Brenda Caldwell. Thank you very much for coming and discussing forgiveness, anger, and hope.
Thank you.